Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing The Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into an overview of the book, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Listen to this on audiobook, which I highly recommend, but unfortunately I don't have a cover to share with you. I believe Malcolm Gladwell in the audiobook mentions this is also available on print, but that's why I don't have a cover to share with you this week. Just real briefly, Malcolm Gladwell is a very well-known author. He typically is thrown into the category of pop psychology. I reviewed Talking to Strangers, a year and a half ago or so. So I'll leave a link to that video below if you want to learn more about Malcolm Gladwell. I talk a little bit about him there. Moving on to The Bomber Mafia, what this book is Malcolm Gladwell's essentially 7-ish hour long audiobook about what today would be the Air Force, but at the time was a wing of the Army, which was dealing with the air power. So he looks at the birth of the idea of an Air Force circa World War I all the way up to the end of World War II, and how the idea of what an Air Force could be and should be was really heavily debated. He uses two historical figures to show that debate, Hansel and LeMay. He also goes into the history of some technological revolutions, like how napalm was invented, as well as I believe it's called a bombing aerial site, which is a key piece of technology that precision bombing, the technology of all precision bomb is really starts with this piece of technology. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was strong in many areas. I think that it felt like a return to form to me in a lot of ways. I think he builds a lot on what he did for Talking to Strangers here. He integrates archival audio really, really well. He did that a couple times in Talking to Strangers. This, to me, takes that idea and does it like tenfold, and he does a really great job of making everything sound really good. He uses audio throughout the book, music throughout the book that's all sounds like it could be music you would hear at a military ceremony. It's really, really well done. He reads the book himself, he knows his writing really well, and he punctuates his points in, I thought, a very strong manner. And Malcolm Gladwell is one of those people, when you hear him read, there's not really a separation between him and his writing, if that makes sense. It feels like he is someone who has read everything and, written everything, and then read it out loud, and it's one voice. And so when he has to go from writing to reading, there's not really any kind of question of the inflection of what he meant and what does this sound like. Is this the right interpretation? It just comes through really strongly. The subject matter itself was really interesting. There's a lot of colorful characters in this. I think he moves around enough to kind of keep things interesting. I think if there is downsides on it, I thought there were a couple areas that he spent a little bit too much time. When he talks about how napalm was invented, I could have probably used a little bit of trimming there. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I don't know how much I'm going to retain of it. I think if that's the only other downside I could have, is usually where I think Malcolm Gladwell is his best is finding the hidden story to things. And I think he does a little bit of that here as far as re-examining the role of firebombing and the surrender of the Japanese in the Second World War. But the book is really it's not really focused on that. I think if he had made that the sheer and only focus of the book, it would have been different. I don't know if it would have been better or worse, but it would have been more of, I think, what he's best at, which is finding, okay, well, this is the way you think things are, but they're really not. They're really like this. And I think that this book, for better or worse, doesn't do that as much. I think because he's not trying to tell the hidden story of anything, at least I didn't feel he was. I think he didn't fall into the trap that he fell into in Talking to Strangers, where some of the stories he uses are, I think, can be criticized or attacked on a few different levels. I think here he does a good job of, because he's using archival footage so often, he's like, well, this is the story, this is what people felt. I'm going to contextualize it a little bit, but I'm going to use that to really tell a greater sweeping argument that I don't think a lot of people would criticize. I'm sure that historians will come after him after this. especially World War II historians, because it's such a saturated field, and I'm sure people will have different takes on this book. But as someone who is not a World War II historian, I didn't see there was very much controversial topics that he goes down here. I mean, this is pretty well tread territory. I think he just tells this story very effectively and very, very professionally done. Everything feels like it's a production, and I mean that in the best way. Time and effort is put into this. I think it's a really, really strong audiobook, and I highly recommend the audiobook. If there's anybody I would not recommend it to, there are a couple of areas that are pretty powerful, because you're hearing about from the victims of bombings themselves, how they felt in both London and Tokyo when they were bombed. These are first-person accounts, and I could see how for a lot of people that would be really hard to hear. And I definitely teared up in certain sections of the book because it is really powerful. I do recommend it it feels like if you said, Malcolm Gladwell writes a book about World War II, I know what I'm going to get my dad for Father's Day. It pretty much is exactly that. So I do think if you need to get your dad a gift for Father's Day, this is probably a good choice. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about it. Overall, I don't know how long it's going to stick with me, because it's not like The Tipping Point. It's not like Outliers. It's not like David and Goliath, where I had to sit and think about what he was saying, because I felt that what he was talking about applied to other areas of the world. This is really just a story that's really well done, but it's just really, I thought, a fairly self-contained story. So if you like your Malcolm Gladwell with topics that you can take and think about and apply to other areas in life and in business in the world, I don't think that this is that. Nothing against it. I think it's, like I said, I think it's really, really well done, and I think I know I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed talking to strangers, and I had less of an adverse reaction after reading it. I enjoyed it. I thought it could be trimmed in some places, but overall I thought it was really well done. So that's The Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm still working on City on Fire. So next time I will not be reviewing that. Next weekend I will be reviewing Good Neighbors by Sarah Langan. Until next time, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Like the video. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll have my Twitter link below. Until next time, bye.